We've seen you hopeless, scared, trapped. We've seen you devastated. But we've always seen you sacrifice and put others first. We've seen you love from a distance and make a difference to so many lives, overcoming all challenges, because that's who you are. It's part of your indelible DNA. It's the one thing that unites us. Our spirit, our ability to rise, reach out, to love, to care. Thank you for playing your part and impacting our people's lives. Because this is what makes us South African. We see you. We've seen you hopeless, scared, trapped. We've seen you devastated. But we've always seen you sacrifice and put others first. We've seen you love from a distance and make a difference to so many lives, overcoming all challenges, because that's who you are. It's part of your indelible DNA. It's the one thing that unites us. Our spirit, our ability to rise, reach out, to love, to care. Thank you for playing your part and impacting our people's lives.
Time.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Nelson Mandela Children's Film Festival 2022. We are so excited to have this afternoon some of the directors, producers, filmmakers of the films that are curated as part of our festival. We have Claudia from South Africa, Ben Alabas from Saudi Arabia, and Ursula, who has a wonderful film that she has worked on, a little animation which she was really excited to share with the Nelson Mandela Children's Film Festival. So I'm going to start with you, Claudia, because I think that process of bringing together the Nelson Mandela Children's African folktales has been quite a long one for you, but you've really had the tenacity to continue to push forth, to struggle through it. Please tell us about and so many Claudia.
Hi, Fidos. Thank you so much. And thank you again for this opportunity. We really appreciate everything you've done for us to bring us to this point. This is my 7-year journey. I think that's where we have to start because, as you said, it has been a long journey for me, starting off with trying to get the funding. I think as filmmakers, we all know that is our biggest challenge. And in the beginning, we traveled with the Department of Trade and Industry to different film festivals trying to secure co-productions. I went to Annecy, I went to Rio, and a lot of people were interested. But I think in every country where they are busy, there are filmmakers looking for funding. As a result, getting a co-production is one of the most difficult things. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, we got the money here, right here at home with the KZN Film Commission, which was absolutely wonderful that they supported our film and were interested in the project and gave us enough funding to produce 5 of our stories. I've lost you for a moment, so I'll just carry on talking until I get an indication that you'd like to ask a question. So just in terms of that, so we received the funding, but the actual production of 5 animations took us 3 years, which it shouldn't have. It should have gone much quicker than that. So that was also a challenge that we had because we got hit with the COVID pandemic right in the middle of our production. And the result of that was that the student animations that we were, the school that we were working with, the college was closed. But we obviously tried to continue to work with the students and the graduates online. And then we were fortunate to get money from the Presidential Employment Stimulus Fund, which then kind of just gave us the kick to carry on moving. So I just need to thank the KZN Film Commission and the Presidential Employment Fund for helping us complete this project, because that was the one thing that pulled us through and made it possible for us to complete our project successfully.
Thanks, Claudia. What I think is also exciting was the local participation, the young children, people who never really worked in animation. Talk us through that process.
So the idea, obviously, as you know, our budgets are low. So the idea we had was to work with students, and these sort of just were basically in their second year only of the school. And so it was really exciting for them. We had like workshops with the students, and they had what they call like a bosberaad kind of thing, where they all got together for the weekend and put together ideas. So we'd give them the stories, and then they would come up with different ideas in terms of the character design and everything, which was really exciting because, all the young minds put together. And we had quite a wonderful time at CFAT Studios in Durban when we were busy journeying through the different characters. Also, they put together storyboards for us, and were really quite enthusiastic with what they came forward with in terms of assisting us with the big process. But then, of course, there had to be a transfer of skills. So we got a professional company in Johannesburg called Mind's Eye Creative, who then worked very closely with all the graduates, also online during that time, sending them notes on how to fix their animation. So there was a lot of transfer of skills and opportunities that were created for the young animators during this process. Even voice artists, our youngest voice artist is like 7 years old. And we went up to using up to the elderly that were like 80 years old for our grandfather in one of our productions. Facito, he is a man of small stature. And it was so wonderful also to work with him and have him do the character of Facito. I remember when I first called him, I said, "Could I please speak to your mom?" And he said, "No, you can speak to me." He had this wonderful little kid's voice. And then realized, he said to me, "Claudia, I'm 23 years old." And I said, "Oh, wonderful." And he, came over to the studio all by himself. And I had been so surprised because I spoke to him only on the phone. I hadn't actually seen him. And it was so wonderful to work with him as well. So we were very fortunate in that sense, working with people. We gave people the opportunity to be voice artists who had never been in a studio before. And in addition, we got some really famous people like Peter Butler, who was the voice of E, and people like Rajesh Kupi as well. So it was a nice balance of well-known voice artists and giving opportunity to young people and artists that hadn't had those opportunities before.
And it's been really exciting to see that growth, Claudia, because we have all, I think all of South Africa stood behind you, at least the people in the children's sector, because we were so familiar with the challenge around it. And also that you went out of your way to get the rights. And I think this is an important issue because, Ursula, I'm coming to you. I know you were very concerned about rights and, who owns the rights, copyright, can this go out, which territories, etc. So, Claudia, I'll move over to Ursula as you consider the issue around the rights, when you got the rights just for the novel, for the book itself, before you even got to writing the scripts. So, Ursula, welcome. I'm so happy that you can be with us. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and the idea around this wonderful film that you guys have produced. You're on mute, Ursula.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us to your wonderful festival. We were really happy to share our film with South African audiences. And I'm really glad you put up this question regarding the rights, because this is a part of this film project that has been very important to me, because this Oh no, you said I should talk about myself first, right? Okay, well, just to quickly introduce myself, I am a Swiss animation filmmaker and producer, and I have worked in the European animation industry for quite some time now, and I have started producing my own and other projects 4 years ago. But before that, I've been working in the industry for more than 10 years. The film that I produced here, this short film, is a film that I have directed myself and produced myself, and it's based on a story from Papua New Guinea, which is the country that I was born in too. I didn't grow up there, but I was born there, and it was always something that influenced me a lot in my life later on. So I decided, because I knew that there were a lot of stories, like oral tradition, being passed down over generations from one to the next in Papua New Guinea. I had heard about these stories a lot, and it was like at one point I thought it would be nice to turn one of these stories into film, but I was very aware of the oral tradition and the rights situations, because it's not my own culture, it's not my cultural background. I was very careful to find out the rights owners, to talk to them, and to ask them for permission to use their story to make a film of it. And it was quite a journey to track down the rights owners, because I had to travel to Papua New Guinea twice, and I talked to people and really try to find out, so who is the real origin of the story, because a lot of people tell the story and you cannot never really know, like, where does it originally come from. But we were lucky to find the clan that owns the story. And we asked them and what they think about the idea, and they were very happy to hear that people were interested in their stories, and also that it would be shown to international audiences. So for me, this is also a way to make the culture, the cultural heritage of this kind of the Papua New Guinea available to a larger audience, which otherwise wouldn't happen so easily, because there is no animation industry or film industry. There's very little support in the country. So I was trying to, with this film, to sort of support this and collaborate with local artists and musicians and filmmakers to co-develop this project together, and then finally bring it to the screens. So yeah, this is something very important, because otherwise these oral traditions, they are getting lost if they're not told anymore. Like the older generations are dying out, the younger generations are not interested in the stories anymore, and so like this, the oral tradition sort of gets lost, and we try to preserve it in this form of film and make it available to for people to watch. Yes, so yeah, that's the story behind the rights that I was very careful about.
We'll just get Bash to show us that little clip. The clip has all of the films, but I think it would be interesting for people to get a taste. Bash, are you able to show that, please? Alabas, I'm so excited to have you here as part of this conversation with us, precisely because we had you last year with a wonderful film that we all loved, and we know your work and the quality of your work, particularly in animation. Please introduce yourself, tell us about the work you do both in Egypt and other parts of the Middle East, and then why you chose this particular animation. You can unmute yourself. You're on mute.
Okay, I'm fine. All right. I'm so pleased that I'm joining you always. For those, you're always putting people together. I'm also very happy to join the festival. My name is Al Abbas Hamiduddin. I've been in business, the animation business, for the last 30 years. We started the animation in Egypt slowly until last year we finished a feature film, animated feature film. And the last film, which is called Fish, or Fishy sometimes we call it, it's about the effect of war on children. And the idea is that we show the emotions, the messages, all what we want to say in visual more than in speech. And I hope that is clear in the it says 7 minutes 15 seconds. And I hope it's clear that we tried a lot to visually communicate our message in the film. The animation was simple. There is a black and white. The film is also black and white. Starts with the white. The whole world is rosy, and then the war comes, and then the children affected. And it ends up in a mood that says war is a vicious circle, where when you start it, you can't end it. So that's what it is.
Yes, and I think the quality of the animation, but also the children, just as you say, just to visually represent, so people see what you're saying without too much dialogue, which is absolutely important in that whole conversation, and how it impacts children, really how war can impact children.
Yes. Well, we tend to forget that the effect on children is the future. It's not the present, and that's why we choose that. It's not the suffering of the old people or the mature people. It is the suffering that will come with the children in the future when they grow up, because they are the children of war, and they can be the armies in the future. And that's the whole message. When we stop war, we stop it not only in the present, but also in the future, if we could actually stop it. But in any case, this is my first direction of the short film. I've been a filmmaker, done so many episodes and series in the last 30 years, but this is the first me trying to be a director, and I hope I did something.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
Claudia, I would like you, because I did give the others an opportunity to, it's almost because I know you so well that I'm just like, Claudia, let's talk. Can you please tell them a little bit about yourself? I think it's important to know for others sitting there that you're also a lawyer, you're an attorney, and that this is your sidekick, or maybe your most important side hustle. About that, and then also, as I said earlier, getting the rights to Mandela's African folktales.
Thank you very much, Verdosia. I suppose I could introduce myself again. Claudia Noble, attorney and filmmaker, an actress on the side as well. Busy with some theatre productions happening next week, so I'm carrying a couple of hats. But it's all just the love of the arts that has caused us, to do whatever we can, from producing to directing. I started off directing a short film, Pindile's Heart. It was a children's short film, and it did very well. And that was really my inspiration to look for other material for children. And that's how I came across the book, Nelson Mandela's Favorite African Folktales. I'd actually found it on the internet while surfing children's books. And I then, purchased the book online. And when I got to read all the stories, I thought, oh my goodness, this really, we need to have children to have access to these stories, because a lot of children, the books are there, but when now, people that are listening know the kids don't really read anymore. All they do is watch television, even on their phones. Every child has already got a phone now, downloading cartoons and animations from Netflix. And I thought it was just important for us to tell the African stories and get them out there, and that animation and film was definitely one of those forms to do so. Being an attorney, of course, I knew that the most important thing was to secure the rights to do the actual production. And so I contacted the publishers of the book. Now, the book actually contains 32 stories, but the publishers were only able to get permission from 30 of those writers in order for us to produce them into animation. So even though there are 32, we're actually only producing 30. And then there was a whole thing around the name, because the book that was published in South Africa was actually called Madiba's Favorite Folktales. And they said, no, you can't use the name Madiba because it belongs to a village. It was a village where they had actually secured the name of Madiba. It was copywritten, the name Madiba. And the international book was called Nelson's Favorite African Folktales. And even there, even though I'd gotten the rights to the stories, I didn't have the rights to actually use the name. So we had to approach the Nelson Mandela Foundation and speak to them about the fact that we were going to be animating the stories in the book, and get permission from them to use the name Nelson Mandela's African Folktales, which we fortunately secured as well. And that is why we were able to do the story, call it Nelson Mandela's Favorite African Folktales, and be able to produce 30 of them.
That's wonderful. And also, I should say that the first one that you kind of piloted was at the first Nelson Mandela Children's Film Festival 5 years ago, which was really exciting. And so 5 years later, to see just how well you have managed, I know, with all the drama, with all the challenges, but how wonderful that you can celebrate now. How many films are there in total that are completed?
There are 6 in total with the pilots.
6. Wow.
Yeah.
That is really amazing. And we will be taking it to Egypt later this year with Madame Sohail's Festival. So hopefully we'll meet Ben Alabas there when we get to Egypt. But let me now come to these wonderful adventures of Wolf and Wolf, because I met this couple walking around Annecy in France. Even though they're South Africans, I didn't know who they were. And I saw them walking with these little car thingies, right? What are you wired, like a wired little vehicle. And then when I went to the South African stand, people were like, oh my goodness, did you see? I was like, I just bumped into them. So I thought it was so important to use the opportunity, as you would know, Claudia and the others, just for us to network, to bring together, to support each other, to see, for those who have started like Ben Alabas doing it for 30 years, or Ursula for 10 and 15 years. And Claudia, the challenge is, how do we hold the hands of these two wonderful people who have been in the film industry for a very long time, but are now looking at quality children's content. So welcome to you two. Please introduce yourselves and tell us about your wonderful work.
We're going to do a quick, I'm Madeleine Sia.
And I'm Valdemar. We come from the live action side of things. I'm a production designer and Madeleine's a costume designer. And when we bumped into you at the fountain, we were taking a break after our 18,000 step day, which we traveled with the wire cars. So we took our merchandise over to Annecy, and it was lovely bumping into you. Yeah. So thanks for reaching out.
We'll quickly just do a 3 to 4 minutes, just take you through the our project. Is it okay if I share my screen? Okay.
Yes, please. Dash, can they share the screen? There we are.
So we'd like to introduce you to The Adventures of Wolf and Wolf, which is a 7-minute episode 2D series for kids aged 4 to 7. And we're looking at about 26 episodes of action adventure that's underwritten with a social emotional undertone. We'd like to transport you to a small African coastal town where a 7-year-old wolf, together with his imaginary friend, shows kids how to tame big emotions into personal power when they go on courage-building and challenging action-filled adventures. Supported by the Motley Crew of after-school friends, this duo turns solving problems into imaginary play with their favorite toys, their wire cars.
These distinctively African toys plays a huge role in our play pattern. The first character we'd like to introduce to you is our main character, Wolf. Just like his heroes, it's almost like a Crocodile Dundee or James Bond. Imagine a sorry, 1 second. Slip there. Crocodile Dundee or James Bond. Wolf carries the group. He's always the plan maker. He's always solving the problem. He's also a bit humorous. He always initiates the rescue missions and tames the friends with big emotion.
But one of Wolf's secrets to always being so calm and confident is having his toy doll, Petey, by his side, and she's often found in the nook of his elbow. But when imagination goes into an adventurous direction, Petey comes to life in this Oprah-like fearlessness little character with mixed with Hermione Granger's level-headed logic. And together, Wolf and Petey are the brawn and brains of each episode. We also have a cast of secondary characters, which is kind of led by Sibu, the anxious lion, who always alerts the friends to the problem. And then we've also...
He's like the news bearer.
Yes,
the Tanny from the town.
Yeah, the comedy and the physical comedy. And then we've got our meerkats, Talita and Wadey, Logan, our lovable monkey, Mafuya, our shy giraffe, and Peyton, our creative and smart little mouse.
Our authentic African coastal town offers a high volume of episodes. We've got various spots where you can play off. We've got town centre, we've got the fish market, we've got the busy streets, we've got our barber, the list goes on.
So we've developed a pilot script as well as the outlines for 5 more episodes. Our pilot script, the lyrical lantern, revolves around facing your fears of the dark, building the courage to face your fears of the dark. We've got a very strongly formatted episodic structure, which takes our viewers from discovering the problem and then takes them with the cast from the real world into the imaginary world, where they also learn these non-overt life lessons. This takes us to our very strong statement of intent, which is creating building blocks for emotional resilience in kids from a very young age.
As creators of the show, as we mentioned, myself and Malay have been part of the live action for almost 15 years now. We also joined with Mind's Eye Creative as our animation studio, and in Nachtvlug as our production house to just give us the infrastructure that we need.
And then we own a kids brand, Wolf Kids, which is available on takealot.com. And with this brand, we've developed it into a merchandise brand, which now sells merch. And then we're busy developing our wire cars and our soft toys as well. Our budget that we're looking at for the 26 episodes is a total of 3.2 million euros. Now it's the same. But we are looking for full development as well as full production, and we are interested in co-productions as well. And that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I would like Claudia, Ursula, and Ben Alabas to give us what you think. So the idea was for today's session that you would talk about your projects, but then I wanted them to share their ideas. And given your own history and how you went through your process, what do you think about this film, this idea, just to help the adventures of Wolf and Wolf, because they will be presenting again on the 27th to a group of other experts. Ursula, may I ask you what you think?
So, well, it's a lovely project. Very congratulations to both of you for the very nice presentation, and I can really look forward to seeing the animations get to life. It really sounds promising. I've been working in, as a matter of fact, I've been working in the series production for quite some time, like most of the time as a production manager. So I know the whole production side of animated series, and so I can really see a lot of potential in your project. It's really lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Claudia?
Thank you for those. Well, congratulations, guys. A really lovely idea. The characters are so unique. I love the way that, their mouths are so big. And then there's like something missing, but it gives them that uniqueness about their form. And I think children would really be able to identify with the idea, because a lot of children suffer from anxiety. In fact, I think in our generation, anxiety was not even diagnosed as a problem. And, we're just treated to say, oh, no, you're just being full of nonsense, or you just don't, kids were just dismissed because of that. And I think it's so important for parents with kids that have anxiety to also understand what they're going through, because I'm sure even parents, would normally watch something with their children and understand that. So even though it's targeted to that target market that you have there for the young ones, I think even if their parents were watching with them, they could learn something from the stories that you're telling. It's such an important subject to deal with. Congratulations on that, really. The characters were lovely. The world of the story also looked quite exciting, because it's based on an actual village that exists. So it's real. And that comes out as well in your presentation. I was curious, though, this actor, I thought, okay, what did they get it for? And I think when you're pitching, it's also one of the important things, to say, like, this. And so now we're going to do this and we'll be successful again. What it was for.
That was it was actually for France the Train. Was a film we did about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But we're up for another one. I'm All Girls. It was announced last week, so we're quite excited about that as well. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Well done to you both.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, well done. So you know that I chaired the SAFTAs for 2 sessions, so I'm quite familiar with what's going on there.
Yes, thanks.
Not that I vote. I don't vote, so that's good. I mean, you're doing this on your own. Penelabas, what do you think?
I like the characters, like Claudia said. Especially with the background in South Africa, so there is no ethnicity in it. And I also like the mouth, that thing that's missing, but it's not missing. I like that too. These days we have a challenge also, how you can actually attract viewers, because in this social media world, it's not only about who people watch TV like we used to do. It's just like how many views children can see or maybe repeat. And I'm not sure, I have not seen the actual episodes, but I think that's another challenge of how you can attract people to see more of your episodes, not once or one or more. So I think we have to pay more attention to how we can attract in this world of many films for children. And sometimes, most of the times, children are attracted to things that have no messages. Maybe it's just simple ideas, or sometimes just cursing. I have seen things that attract children that has absolutely nothing except looking after viewership. And if we have messages, then we have really to pay attention to how we can attract these our videos or what we would like to present to them. Internet connection, okay, and we grab some of their attention. That's what I think the challenge is.
I understand. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Would you like to say something?
No, we actually agree. So, how do you actually keep them entertained? Whereas you want to build in these emotional stepping stones, but how do you keep them entertained is one of the biggest challenges. And that's where, like you suggested, like humor, or I mean, just like you were saying, swearing, it makes sense. That's the challenge.
Making sure that is built in. Actually,
it shouldn't be education. It shouldn't come forward as an educational show, because that's I won't watch that. You want to watch something enjoyable and fun, and characters that mess us up, not perfect characters, and work on that, because I can't think of anything more boring than watching a show of my son that's educational. He will probably just turn it off.
I think what's important just in our sector, because, we work in the children and media sector for many years, and I mentioned this to you when we had that fateful day at the fountain. I chair the Children's Broadcasting Foundation for Africa. So the work around children and youth media is something we've been doing for a long time. And then coming back to South Africa, we drew up the South African Children's Charter in 1993-94, which led to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution of South Africa in terms of children. And I think it's important for us when we work in the sector around children that we understand those kind of stepping stones, and that there is an Africa Charter on children's broadcasting. So when you look at that, and I always try to start it by saying, Article 5 of the Charter says children should hear, see, and express themselves, their languages, and their life's experiences through the electronic media that reaffirms their sense of self, community, and place. And what Ben Alabas is saying is that you see, and Claudia said it as well, you see the community. So you know that there is an engagement with something that is familiar to them. But there is also something called education and entertainment. And the word that comes out of it is edutainment. And so you are correct that we don't want to be didactic, and we don't want to feel like we're going back to school, and we don't want to be, talking at them, because we should be talking with them. So these are important kind of stepping stones. I think that sometimes when people go into the space, they don't realize that there is a lot of work. There's quite a bit of research that if you just quickly go online and Google, you'll see the amount of energy and time some people take in the research side of production for children. Of course, as producers, as storytellers, we just get in there and just do it. And we learn through that process. And researchers come afterwards and they're like, oh, well, you should have, but you've done it already. So I would encourage you, though, just to look at the edutainment space and what that means when we're talking to children. And that also, Ben Alabas and Ursula, you can help us, especially sitting in Europe, is that, when we segment our audiences, especially for children, we go from 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 10 to 12. And then for us in South Africa, we can go all the way to 16. But in a European environment, by the time they're 12, they feel like they're 16, and they don't want this kind of content. They want to be watching content that, adults are watching. Whereas in an African context, sometimes an Asian context, we're still able to hold the children close to us and guide them with the content that we have. So Ursula, I don't know if you have any experience around that segmentation of audiences when it comes to children's content.
Well, I have been working on the production side, so I haven't really been so much into the distribution part. I'm not like an expert to answer your question, but yes, we do spend a lot of attention to defining precisely the age groups, the target audience, etc. But I think just listening to you as well, I think what also has to be considered apart from the age group and everything is also the territory. As you mentioned, that there are differences in African countries, in Asia, in Europe. So we have to keep that in mind as well when producing a series. It's like, who do we want to produce it for? Does it have to appeal to a worldwide audience? So does it have to have some more universal aspects to it, or do we want to precisely focus it to one territory, which is just as valid and important as well. I think that apart from the age group, this has to be taken into consideration as well. And I think it's also really important for children all around the world to be able to connect to where they are coming from, and not to just receive universal worldwide international content, but to really also be able to see local content that they can relate to most. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think that's very, very important. And then I'd like to come back to the film that you made, which is so local for the community of Papua New Guinea, but having grown up there. And I think with all of us, your impetus almost comes from, as Ben Alabas says, an experience or a location or something maybe as a child that really excited you, enticed you, worried you. And so some of the times the stories come out of that experience. I'd like to know, coming back to you, when you say that this was an important story to tell because you grew up there, even though you don't live there, there's the challenge around making it authentic and making it local. And then, because, in Afrikaans, ons sê local is lekker. So if it's local, it's tasty. It's ours. But you also know that you have to go, they say, you think local, but your expression is global. So you want the world to know about it as well. So in that context, Ursula, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I had an interesting discussion with a female filmmaker from Papua New Guinea, and she told me that she grew up in the schools and that she went to. She grew up with books depicting content that was not from her culture. So it was all foreign culture content from colonial times, even missionary schools. So those were all their white kids in the books that she could not relate to, and that she really felt that there was a gap for her to relate to the books and stories that she grew up with in schools, and that taught her something. And she that's when we said that we would really like to produce something that kids in Papua New Guinea can relate to because it's their own culture, and that to hear their own stories and not stories from abroad, from some other country that they have never even traveled to or don't know. So I think that is one important aspect. But then I also realized that when I produced this film, I would also have to make it relatable to an international audience, because I want people to see that and learn about this culture. So there are maybe things about this culture that I may have to explain to others. And so you have to try to span this huge gap between cultures and try to sort of connect or find out those points that connect all of us, despite our differences, those things that are universal, and those things where we can maybe say this happens in my village, but actually it can also happen to a kid in Europe or a kid in the States. So that's, I think that was one of the great challenges for me, to find out what are these things that differentiate us or that make us special and unique, but what are, on the other hand, things that connect us, that are the same all over the world, no matter what background you're coming from.
Absolutely. Thank you. Claudia, this is interesting for me when it comes to your book, because as you said, you looked for it, you found it online. I was actually in the US doing my master's when I came across this Mandela's African Folktales, and I was quite annoyed. I was like, why are these Americans writing about Mandela's African folktales? There is no way I will purchase this book. There is no way I'm interested in this book. And then, decades later, years later, I meet you And there's such a totally different nuance around how you embraced it. And I remember it so distinctly because it was, it was in a bookstore and it was quite cheap. And I turned and I looked and I was like, no, this is not African. Please tell me about that, because I think this is really fantastic around what is authentic.
I think the most important thing is that, and it's also something we've done, is that we've also had to adapt the stories a little bit. So that, when you say it's local, but, are you reaching out there? So, for example, one of our stories, The Snake Chief, it was more from the perspective of in the book, from the mother and how she goes out to go and collect the berries. It wasn't really the journey of a young girl, but we thought because we're dealing with children, we have to adapt it slightly. So that's why it's an adaptation of the book. Now, our screenplay is a little different. So, it's a very thin line because you need to balance to tell the actual true story, but then also have it correct for children. I mean, even if you look at the folk tales of Hansel and Gretel, the real folk tale, they were very dark. Cinderella, all of them, but it was adjusted by Disney so that it would be suitable for children. So it is really a difficult thing to do, but you have to realize that when you're dealing with children. I mean, I have one scene, for example, in Lion and Hare, where they make a fire and they make Hare go down there, to prove that he's actually quite masterful. And I kept saying to the guys, we got to cut this out. We can't put this in, And they were saying, no, you have to, because it's what children want. They want to see the danger and everything, So every time I'm watching it, I'm cringing. I'm thinking, I should have cut out the piece of the fire, but children seem to actually want that. It's like Alaba said earlier, what is your unique selling point? What is drawing the children? And that's when you have that difficulty with keeping it authentically African, but still reaching out there. So we did battle with that, I must say. I don't know if I've really answered your question, but if I could ask again, but that's what I found, in our trying to keep it to the actual story, we still needed to change them a bit so that they would be more screenplay friendly. So therefore, based on the book, adapted from the book is really what we're saying.
So Ben Alabas, if I come to you, because these are two very different films that I'm seeing, the one that we had in our festival last year, and then this one that you have now, and where you say, you use your director's hat, but you're also talking about a very difficult theme. And I wonder, part of it could be us as adults and our concerns, but also what we want to share with a younger audience. Talk to us about that. Okay. May I say before I forget another observation or advice for Wolf and Wolf? Because we tend to forget, although we start, maybe I'm not saying something new, but I think before the Wolf and Wolf goes live, they have to have a Facebook, a TikTok, a YouTube, and all the works. Not later, but before. Because if later, then people will just benefit from it before you do, if it is successful. And that's what I experienced in our film. There is a TikTok where it for The Night of the Princess, and it took about 4.3 million views. And I just and of course he gets, or the person gets the money for that, and we lose. So there is so much interest in the social media, and I think you have to go the whole spectrum. Use it all. Don't think if you are on YouTube, it's enough. Go on YouTube, go TikTok, go everywhere, and it'll work. For me, there are two different challenges for those. The feature film was first. We want to say that yes, we can do feature films, although it's difficult, although there is a learning curve, although there is a limited, everything is limited.